Hey everyone, it's Justin Rosser here with Fantasy Marksman, joined by Dave Carey, Matt Burnell, and Martin Mader. You can find us at Twitter at Fantasy Marksman or look us up online at www.fantasymarksman.com. All right, we have three players we like and three players we don't for this week. We're going to keep it pretty quick here to keep the pace up and keep the time a bit shorter. So I'll start her off. Well, first off, hey, what's up, guys?
Hey Justin, how you doing, man?
Good, man.
I'm doing good. How's everyone else?
Doing good.
All right, I'll start her off here. A guy I like, number one, David Montgomery this week. I think he's gonna be awesome. He's against Houston. They have the second worst run defense. And in a half-point PPR since he's come back from injuries, he's had a 22.8 points and 25.1 point performances. And after this week, he's gold too. He has two great matchups. I'm really high on Montgomery for the rest of the year. I think that people could have sniped him at the trade deadline and really have it pay off. Yeah, it's my first like. Go ahead, Dave.
I'll start with the player I like this week. I like J.D. McKissic for the Washington football team. I think that with Antonio Gibson out and the usage that we saw from McKissic in relief last week, so to speak, it bodes well in a matchup against San Francisco. McKissic saw 10 receptions on 10 targets in Week 13 while the team was playing from behind. They come into this game this week as a slight dog, less than a field goal here, but we should see more usage for McKissic, especially in the passing game. Personally, I'm not a big fan of Peyton Barber and would not consider starting him, even though he has seen a little bit of usage last week, kind of took over for Antonio Gibson on the running downs. But J.D. McKissic's the well-rounded player I want to start for my flex this week.
All right, I guess it's me on my stardom.
Go ahead, buddy. Yeah.
Well, I'm a little biased because I have this player on my team, but after last week with close to a 30-point game, I'm going to say Corey Davis against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think he has been pretty reliable in his last couple games, and I think you just got to ride the hot hand, and that's a pretty juicy matchup, I'd say.
Yeah, he's been fantastic this
Great
lately.
matchup too.
Yeah. Go ahead, Martin.
All right, boys. Mine is maybe a little bit counterintuitive this week, but I think you really got to be looking at one Mr. Austin Eckler. Atlanta has been pretty stout against the run so far, but Eckler is not your standard run the ball running back. He's going to see a ton of looks in a game which, after last week, I'd expect them to be behind, right? And he's the perfect outlet for Justin Herbert this week and going forward against Vegas and Denver coming up into the playoffs. I think if you have Eckler, he came back at just the right time, and he's going to help you at least get through this week and hopefully into the fantasy semifinals and maybe even the finals.
I like it. I definitely thought about putting him on my list as well. He's coming out hot fire. I guess his last game wasn't super hot, but you're right, Martin. He should get a lot of volume. You guys think we should keep going with our likes here, or switch over to dislikes for three, or?
Yeah, I got a couple more players to talk about that I like for this week. If you're
all right,
stay there.
Yeah, for sure. This is a guy I am known for not liking overly, but he's starting to grow on me for the end of this year. It's T.Y. Hilton. He had 8 of 11 targets last week, and if you get any receiver over 10 targets, your eyes are popping out of your head. You're excited about them, and I think he's had a touchdown in each of his last 2 games. And he's playing Las Vegas, who is in the middle of ranking for covering wide receivers. But that shouldn't alter me. I think T.Y. Hilton's being targeted a lot more lately, and I think that he's going to be targeted a lot in this game. Go ahead.
All right, I like that choice. I'm going to continue here with another Indianapolis Colts player. I think there's a couple players that fit the bill here that you can start, whether it be Jonathan Taylor or Nyheim Hines. But looking at the game script with Las Vegas this week, this comes in as the third highest projection on the week. Las Vegas has been pretty bad against the run. They're bottom third of the league in terms of run defense, and they give up just as much in the passing game as they do in the run game. The team's not particularly good at either. Add to that, the Raiders have been playing some of their worst football on the year in the last couple weeks, and this game figures to be a high-scoring game. Jonathan Taylor's got more usage, saw 7 yards per carry last week, and has the momentum in his favor at this time. To me, that's the Colts running back you want to start this week. But as we saw last week, both Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines, especially Hines with his usage in the red zone, as well as passing game, are good options, at least at a flex level, if not at an RB2 level. Over to you, Matt.
My next startable guy, I would say, is Myles Gaskin against KC, I believe, this week. And I think that he looks good. He was out for a little bit, but since coming back, I think he's the primary back there, and he's going to get a lot of touches. And that's a team that's playing for something right now, and it seems like they have something working, and would be my pick.
Mr. Consistency, I like it. He's always like that 10 to 14 point guy.
Yeah, Gaskin's been solid for sure. I'll jump right into mine. It might be a little bit counterintuitive to how he's done over the last little bit. And I gotta say this because he's on my team. I'm missing Joe Mixon, and I think Gio Bernard is gonna have a fantastic week 14. You look at the defenses he's played since their bye week. At Pittsburgh, at Washington, home to the Giants after one Mr. Joe Burrow went out, and then at Miami. Now, those have been some phenomenal defenses to this point in the season, and now he's facing Dallas, which I don't know if you guys watched that game just yesterday evening, but man, Dallas looks like a team defeated. And I think that Gio Bernard is actually going to blow up a little bit this week. I think he's going to have some opportunities. He's still getting, 12 to 15 touches a game, and he fits in right in that like mid RB2 spot in my mind, which I think is a little bit higher than you might see him out there being rated as. I think he slides in this week at maybe RB 18 on the week, and actually helps you with maybe a dozen fantasy points on 2-3 receptions, maybe 12 carries for maybe 100 scrimmage yards. Touchdown's a bonus if he gets it, but I think he'll put up a bunch of yards and some good points for you this week against a really reeling Dallas team.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. I think with even with the quarterback not being Burrow, obviously, they still do have the receivers to push it downfield and get them into the red zone for him to possibly get a touchdown as well. So I'll start with my third like him, and it's tight end position, Eric Ebron. He's had 11 targets in both of the last 2 games, and on the year, he usually doesn't get under 6 targets. He's not like a blow-up high ceiling guy, but he's a great floor guy, and he's a consistent 10-point a game guy. And that's kind of what you're looking for in a tight end, since most of them are not doing that well and failing. So you kind of hope to get somebody who's just consistent in your lineup. And they're against Buffalo, which is actually the 6th worst against the tight end position on the year. And after their big loss last week, losing their undefeated streak, I think that all the players on Pittsburgh are going to have a little extra motivation to play a little bit harder to get on the back on the winning train. Go ahead, Dave.
It's a really good player to choose and really good guy to look at plugging into your lineup, since you know that he's likely been available in over half the leagues that you play in this year for at least the first half of the season, if not longer in some. Next player I'd like to put up there for you, probably not available on waivers, but this guy might be sitting on your bench and be even penciled into your lineup. I think you can put Marvin Jones Jr. in ahead of a couple other guys this week. Another game script that I really like this week is Green Bay opening up as a touchdown favorite against Detroit. This game's got a 55 and a half point, check that right now, projection. And Detroit is figuring to be playing the passing game to catch up against Green Bay. Green Bay's been better this year against the pass, but the usage for Marvin Jones has been really, really nice. With or without Kenny Golladay, I think that Marvin Jones will see a lot of favorable coverage from Green Bay. Green Bay's got to try and take away TJ Hawkinson in a lot of scenarios where Marvin Jones has been used in possession receiving role. So I think we can look to see something maybe not as high in terms of the point total as Marvin Jones saw last week. I think he had 8 receptions for 115 yards and a touchdown. But I think that we can probably book Marvin Jones for somewhere in the range of 90 to 100 yards this week. So if you've got a PPR format and the option to play him, I think he belongs in your lineup, potentially ahead of some higher level players, bigger household names who might struggle this week in worse matchups.
Nice, Dave. I like that. My next pick for stardom, I mean, you're probably playing this guy if you picked him up, is Wayne Gallman. I think he's been extremely consistent. He plays the Cards this week. Cards have allowed 5 rushing touchdowns in the past 3 games. So I think they're playing for something at the moment as well, and you got to start him, I'd say.
Good choice.
Yeah, I like that.
I like that too. I'm gonna jump to wide receiver since I think my first 2 I went running back on. And I'm gonna go to a guy that's higher up in the list, but it's a guy you absolutely must start this week, especially after some down performances the last couple weeks. And that's Keenan Allen. The guy's had a combined 9 receptions over the last 2 games for less than 100 yards. But that volume is still coming his way. And this week he gets Atlanta, right? Same thing I was talking about before with Eckler. You're going to see a lot of volume coming out of Herbert. I mean, that's Herbert's first bad game of his career. The guy's looked phenomenal all year. And I think he's really going to take it to Atlanta, right? I think if you're looking at Keenan Allen this week, don't look at his last couple games. Look at his body of work over the whole season, where he's averaging probably 12 targets a game. And I think he'll come out on top with probably a 20-plus point fantasy week for you this week in PPR. I'm looking at something like 9 receptions for 100 yards and a touchdown.
Nice, I like it. I definitely have Herbert in my top 3 this week for scoring as well. So I think they're going to be putting the ball in the air to Keenan Allen and to the running back for sure. So yeah, let's go to our dislikes for the week. I'll start with my own guy I have in home league, Miles Sanders. Oh, he plays the best run defense in the league. Right off the bat, you're like, The last 3 games, he's been under 8 points with 7.6, 5.2, and 3.1 and half-point PPR. And he only averages 10.6 rushes per game. For a guy you considered when you drafted him to be a bell cow kind of guy, that's just definitely not bell cow numbers. I think that's what you'd be getting with Darrell Henderson on an average week. And I don't think anyone's happy about that either. So I just think with the matchup, and unless you really, obviously you're going to start him if you don't have another option or a good option, but I'd almost say I'd start a Myles Gaskin, like Matt had said, over a Miles Sanders this week. And you probably would never have said that a couple weeks ago, but I definitely am on that. I'm on that for this week. So yeah, don't play Miles Sanders if you can.
Well, that's really good. A really good option if you have some depth at running back there too. If you can avoid having Miles Sanders in your lineup this week, then you're very fortunate. I'll move on to a matchup and actually a group of players that I'm not high on this week. And that's going to be the San Francisco running backs. So you can take your pick from the list of 4 players that we've seen play a significant amount for San Francisco throughout the year. 5 if you want to add Jermichael Hasty in there. But I am out on Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson Jr., Tevin Coleman, and my least favorite of all, Jerick McKinnon. I think week to week, San Francisco uses different running backs for different reasons, very similar to a New England Patriots style offense of the past. They use a lot of motion. They use a lot of matchups that they like and that they don't like. And week to week, that's proving to be something that I think has lost GMs a lot of matchups on their fantasy season and isn't something I'm comfortable using going into playoffs. I actually prefer to roster these San Francisco wide receivers at this point in the year, especially with Nick Mullins in, and will look to avoid their running backs in all of my leagues going forward.
Yeah, watching that game, I was like, okay, why is Jeff Wilson out there this much? Where's Raheem Mostert?
Oh, it's boggling. And to add to that, you get them playing Washington this week, you got to consider them as an elite rush defense now. And I just don't want to start them.
Oh,
Yeah.
agreed, 100%. I was looking at my roster on who to cut. I cut Jeff Wilson over Kerryon Johnson because Jeff Wilson coming back off of IR. Need to make a roster move. And I was like, you know what? Nah, Mostert will be the lead there. Jeff Wilson's always the guy if nobody else is left. And I'm watching the game wondering what is happening. But like you said, it's week to week. It's anybody's guess at who will be the hot hand there. At the start of the year, it was Mostert, but he's been battling all those injuries, so it's tough to trust anyone in that backfield, especially this week.
Yep.
Yeah, those West Coast running backs, can't trust any of them. Which segues me into this matchup, but on the opposite side of the ball, I was going to say there's the Rams versus the Patriots, and I would not want to play Damian Harris. I know he has been very reliable. He's been great, but I think against the Rams, he doesn't get used much in the passing game. He's only had 4 catches on the season. And I just think the Rams have one of the best defenses in the league right now. I wouldn't feel very comfortable as him being my RB2. I would much prefer to put him in as a flex. And even then, I would be pretty wary of that.
I like that. I like that. Yeah, that running back, that Rams defense is just pounding it with Aaron Donald, and they play. What I watched on a video recently is they play 2 inside guys, and then the rest they don't send too much pressure because they have such good a defensive line. But then if they do send pressure, it's on the outside, and the 2 guys on the inside contain it so well that they don't even need to send more pressure or extra blitzing through the middle. And teams are just struggling with it. That's why their run defense is so good. I guess that's what you get when you have an elite guy like AD 99, right?
Exactly.
Just
One of the best in the game.
Smash in the middle. So I have a few that I want to go with, but I'll go with my probably most controversial one, maybe to kick it off, and that's Dalvin Cook this week. Speaking of elite guys in the middle, Tampa's run D is one of the most stout in the league. I think you're going to see a bigger game out of guys like Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen this week. I don't think Cook is going to put up the numbers that he normally does. I think he's going to have, yet another down week. So for those of you not in a bye week position this week, I think he's going to be in for a tough start against a stout Tampa Bay run D. He's coming off a fresh bye week, and they're looking for some revenge after going down to the Chiefs in week 12.
I like it. That's a ballsy call, but that's why we're here, right? So my number 2 guy is Christian Kirk. He's been absolutely atrocious in the last 4 games. I think he's been under 7 points in every single one of them. Going up against a hungry 5-7 Giants, which actually people underrate their defense. I think when I talk to them about the Giants, I think they're one of the better pass defenses in the league. And with only 3 targets last week, like, I don't know, man. I can't trust Christian Kirk. He had that like 4 or 5 game. I think it was 4 games out of 5, one with the bye, and they were like really good in the middle of the season. And other than that, Christian Kirk has been just like an absolute ghost out there. And the Cardinals are struggling. I just don't see Kirk unless I can see it this week. I don't feel comfortable putting him in any of my lineups.
Well, that's a good choice. I think by now he's probably on your bench, and you're not thinking of taking him off your bench when you see guys like Larry Fitzgerald, Isabella getting some better usage and some better situations than him right now. So good choice. Next player I have on my list to talk about here, again, is not a specific player, but a group of players in a situation I don't exactly love on the week. I'm going to take the Pittsburgh wide receivers here and say that it's difficult to look into the crystal ball and see which guy's going to score a touchdown on the week. I know Ben Roethlisberger is throwing the ball a lot, and the Pittsburgh running backs are not seeing a tremendous amount of usage. But if you look at the snap percentages for each of these wide receivers, you're seeing some below league average numbers for guys who are still putting up fantasy relevant points. It's hard to say on a week to week basis if we're going to see Chase Claypool being used in a variety of ways in the end zone or in the red zone creatively, I should say. See Deontay Johnson is the team's uncontested wide receiver 1 in some weeks. Some weeks we see Juju Smith-Schuster get the bulk of the targets. And in some other weeks, we've seen James Washington hit some home run passes. All of this is saying that Pittsburgh and Roethlisberger is going to continue to throw the ball at the pace which they are right now. I don't feel comfortable with these plays and don't necessarily recommend them because I don't think that you can accurately pinpoint the player that you think is going to give you the success you need at this point in your playoffs. I'd much rather go with some guys that have a safer floor than this group of players that, although they have a very high ceiling, probably lack the floor that I want to play consistently. I'd love to play a guy like Corey Davis over a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster.
Yeah, I like that call, Dave. My last guy that I would say that, he is a great wide receiver, but it just seems like when Tua is throwing Devontae Parker the ball, they just can't get anything going. When Fitzmagic is in, that's his guy. And it just, I don't know. I just think going into fantasy playoffs, if Tua is starting, which looks like he's going to, I know it's against the Chiefs, it should be a shootout, but I would move away from Devontae Parker. He just doesn't seem reliable going into fantasy playoffs.
I think that's a great call.
Yeah, absolutely. And being AFC West homeboy with the Broncos, I really, really have watched the Chiefs closely this year because obviously they're at the top of my division. There's no chance for the Broncos to catch them, but it hasn't really been the Chiefs' pass defense that's let them down outside of maybe 1 or 2 games. It's really been their run D, right? They leave the run D wide open because they know they can go down and score in a few seconds. It doesn't take them long, right? I mean, how many touchdowns has Tyreek had called back or not called in the last couple of weeks alone? I think it's something like 3 or 4, right? Like the guy is just lighting up the field, right? He had that monster week just a couple of weeks ago, but the Chiefs' pass defense is actually surprisingly good, and it's not a great matchup. Could be a shootout, or it could be just an absolute bust for Miami this week. So I'll jump into my next guy, which is, well, I could go the Dave route, but I'm not going to. I'm going to zone in on one specific guy on this team, and that's
Dave route.
That's Dallas Goedert. I know the guy's been hot the last couple of weeks, but in case everyone missed it, Zach Ertz is back. And they have a rookie QB starting this week. And after he took the field, I didn't see a whole lot going Dallas Goedert's way. I would expect him to kind of try and distribute it as much as possible or hand it off to Miles Sanders maybe more than 10 times this week. Not meaning those are going to be good numbers for anyone involved, but I think he's too unpredictable and too risky to be in anyone's starting lineups this week if you have a better option.
Yeah, I think we need to see how that offense shakes out with a new quarterback before. And I don't think you want to play that game when you're going into the first week of playoffs.
Definitely. That's a good point, Matt. I'll go with my last guy that I don't like on the week. And I'm kind of going with you there, Matt. Not for the fact that it's Parker, but it's Mike Gesicki. Or maybe I should call him Mike Make Me Sicky.
Nice.
He's got
dad jokes.
Yes. That's quarantine jokes right there. Yeah. He's had 10.5 points and 19.3 points in half point PPR in the last two. But don't let that trick you, because that was against the New York Jets and Cincinnati Bengals, both in the bottom three against tight ends. This guy has had absolutely horrific year. If you look at his stats, it'd make you puke. KC is middle of the pack against the tight end, but Mike Gesicki's the first time he's actually put two good games together were the last two he's played. So I would not count on him making that three in a row. I just think that you'll watch the Dolphins play and you'll be like, come on, Gesicki. And all of a sudden you're like, who the hell's that guy? Who's that tight end? Who's that tight end? And all of a sudden all these other tight ends are getting involved and you don't even know who these guys are. And you're like, okay, well, where's Gesicki's volume? And I had him in several leagues and I had to drop him. I'm done with him. I have no interest. I would play an Eric Ebron over him tenfold. So that's my last dislike.
Good player to choose. I got my last player that I will recommend that you do not start this week, and that's going to be CeeDee Lamb. We watched what Dallas did in prime time on Tuesday night, I believe it was this week, and it wasn't pretty. One of the things I didn't like from CeeDee Lamb, and one of the main reasons why I don't want to play him this week, is the connection with Andy Dalton. I thought that was really missing, and it's a big contrast to the connection he obviously had and had developed with Dak Prescott in a really short period of time. I think that CeeDee Lamb is one of the best young players in the NFL. I don't love him this week, and I don't trust him in my fantasy playoffs going forward, simply because the red zone usage for Dallas seems to favor a combination of Ezekiel Elliott, Amari Cooper, as well as the tight end usage when the quarterback rolls out. I would really like to see CeeDee Lamb have a good week. I know they have a pretty soft matchup this week in terms of a pass defense, but I would like to recommend you play some other options. Again, I'm going to use Corey Davis here as an example because I really think this is the guy you want in your lineup and could have easily had on waivers and likely have on your bench at this point. Just not CeeDee Lamb for me, guys.
I like that. Yeah, it's a little tough to trust right now, especially with just how down that team is in general. I thought if they would have won last week somehow on the Tuesday nighter, I guess last week, this week, Tuesday nighter, it's also so close now. But I think that if they had won, they'd have been in that race in the NFC East. And then they might have had some more hope and maybe been more competitive. But at this point, it's a little bit too much of a gamble. And you're right, without Dak there, it's not the same. So
Yeah, that entire team's just playing for their stat lines at this point.
Matt, did you have another guy, or because you said last time that was your last guy, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think that was three starting, three sitting, was it?
Yeah.
If anyone else has Anyone they
Martin,
want
you
to
had
talk
one?
about, feel free.
Yeah, I did have one more. And that one's just a big question mark for me. And that's one Mr. Debo Samuel. I've loved the guy. He's been in my lineups every single week. He's helped me get to the playoffs. But man, is it painful to watch him play with Nick Mullins under center and just how shaky that whole San Fran offense is without Jimmy Garoppolo. He's really the engine of that team. And I think if you can get it into Debo's hands a little bit more, he can do something. But I mean, the guy's coming off a hammy. Watching that game this week, he looked absolutely exhausted. Before the 2-minute warning in the fourth quarter, he was asking to come off. They told him to stay on the field. And he literally just waited for the snap and stood there. Like, he didn't block anyone. He didn't fool anyone. I mean, the guy's just clearly not in mid-season form anymore, I don't think, right? What you'd be hoping for at this stage. Plus, he's going up against Washington. You know, I have a feeling that he might put up a dud for you this week. And you know, I love me some Debo Samuel, but I don't think he'll do it for anyone this week.
Yeah, and you're watching that. You're like, no wonder he's tired last week because they condensed all his catches within that last quarter there.
Yeah.
Like, I was so
Yeah.
frustrated watching that game. Like, why are they not giving, like, even targeting the guy? Like, dude, like, why you try? Like, Ayuk he's good. I like him, but Debo's your man. Like, give the ball to him. That 49er team has some kinks to work out, I tell you.
No, I agree with you 100%.
All
Do you
right,
wanna-
I think that go. What's that?
I was gonna say, do you guys maybe want to do one ghost dark horse pick of the week that is maybe off everyone's radar that could have a good week?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I'll kick it off since I suggested the topic. If he practices and plays this week, I'm going for one big old Rashad Penny. I've been high on the guy all season. I heard he's designated to return off IR. I know he's coming back off an ACL tear, but they've played it real close to him. They said they wouldn't activate him for practice until they were sure he's ready. He's being designated to return this week, so might be a 3-week window. But if they activate him off IR and he plays this week, I don't see why they'd do that unless they plan on giving him some big volume. So Rashad Penny, my sneaky dark horse pick of the week.
Well, I like that. And I like this topic a lot too, Martin. I think throwing out a player that I kind of view in the same way, it's actually on the other side of that game, is Denzel Mims for the New York Jets. I've been kind of patiently waiting week after week to see if Mims would break out as a young wide receiver, especially if he would develop any chemistry with Joe Flacco or Sam Darnold, whichever of those options happens to start. I know last week he had a pretty bad game from a fantasy perspective, but this week he gets a really good matchup in the Seahawks pass defense. He's definitely not going to see top coverage. I think that any team would be crazy not to put their top cover corner on Jamison Crowder, especially in man coverage. And you're just looking at Adams in the middle of the field as the ball hawk that you got to keep the ball away from. I think Mims sees an opportunity to see 7-8 targets this week, maybe a touchdown, and maybe get close to the area of 100 yards.
Yeah, I'm a Mims guy too there, Dave. And, you know, I feel like he just doesn't see the volume necessary. So, yeah, I agree. If he gets the volume, I think he could turn it into a big game. It's a good pick.
Well, I did not have a guy, but if I had to go off the top of my head, I would actually say maybe like an Alan Lazard. I think they're playing Detroit this week, and I think Detroit does not have a good pass either in the bottom 10 there. I think Alan Lazard could really emerge like he did earlier in the year. Like I said, I haven't done a ton of research into that pick, but I do really like him to start emerging here. I thought he would last week, but he against Philly, but he did not. But I think he had like 7 points or something. But look to him, man. Especially if you're in DFS, he could be a super cheap option against a really bad defense that actually could be a little bit higher scoring. So that's probably who I would go with.
Yeah, it's a nice choice too.
I'd say my dark horse would probably be, well, just looking out on like what's available on waivers. I'd say Tim Patrick is a good dark horse. He's only 21% rostered in Yahoo. I mean, if you look at his game log, he's actually put up some pretty good games. And considering just out on the wire, and if you're skeptical about some of the players that we've been mentioning, like, Devontae Parker or something, I don't know. I think he could be a good pickup.
That's a
Playing
really good
Carolina.
one. I like
Love
that.
the pick. Love the pick.
That one was for you, Marty Marr.
One of the few relevant Broncos players, Jerry Jeudy tweaked his knee and he just hasn't looked the same. I feel like he's just out there running routes as a distraction for the other guys, Noah Fant, Melvin Gordon, and the guy Tim Patrick that's scoring the touchdowns for the Broncos last week versus the Chiefs. He looked pretty good. He's made some phenomenal catches all year. I'm with you on that one, Matt.
Yeah, as long as Locke is playing, I'm way more comfortable with Tim Patrick. If Locke's not playing, this guy's just on my bench, Locke is the heartbeat to that team, in my opinion. So, all right, let's. That's about it. We're gonna wrap it up here. I just want to leave you guys with one note: the Thursday nighter, December 10th, New England Patriot at Los Angeles Rams. I'm a Rams fan, as everybody knows, and I just want to lay it out there that I think that the Rams are going to put some chocolate pudding in their face and go to a 21-7 win here on Thursday nighter. So thanks for listening, everyone. Listening to Fantasy Marksman with me, Justin Rosser, Dave Carey, Matt Burnell, and Martin Mader. And follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Marksman. And thanks for listening, guys.